Origin Energy is a large wholesale and retail energy supplier in Australia, with revenues of around $12 billion and more than 6,000 employees. One of the roles Origin's corporate strategy team would undertake is to understand the company's gaps. Are there inconsistencies between Origin's strategy and their external environment, or gaps between the strategy and the internal environment? Now, we aren't inside the corporate strategy rooms in Origin HQ to be part of that discussion, but we can use this company to bring to light the concept of gap analysis. Large energy companies are complex organisations, so we will focus only on energy generation and the retail selling of power in the Australian market. Firstly, Origin needs to understand how the energy industry will grow and whether their strategies in place are consistent with expected external impacts. When we think about industry growth, we use PESTLE. All PESTLE factors are present for the energy industry, but let's look closer at two prominent factors: political and legal. The level of government intervention in the energy markets in Australia is unprecedented. Large energy generation companies like Origin have benefited from increasing concentration in energy generation as older power stations are shut down, and few companies have the capital to invest in new power generation infrastructure. Also, energy is a commodity, which means prices are driven almost solely by supply and demand. For example, energy companies export most of our gas production to Asian countries, where they can sell at a higher price. Therefore, the domestic market is short on supply and domestic prices have skyrocketed. Recommendations from government inquiries may force Origin to supply a minimum amount of energy to the Australian market, or could limit the maximum market penetration in a particular network region. This creates an inconsistency with Origin's strategy. The second large political and legal impact is related to climate change and whether an Australian government will finally implement and stick to a carbon emissions reduction program. The current inconsistency here against Origin's strategy is not whether it is a tax or a trading scheme or potentially how much it will cost. It is the uncertainty that is causing a lack of investment in new power generation technology and infrastructure. The retail energy market has seen strong growth in new entrants who compete with Origin to sell power to retail customers. More suppliers equate to lower switching costs for buyers and reduced margins for retailers. Origin has a similar strategy to other retailers to acquire and retain customers. However, increasing buyer power means that strategy must be continually reviewed and improved. Utilising Porter's 5 forces enables Origin to find gaps against the industry environment. Another remote and industry environment related gap is increasing consumer education and consumers wanting to move to renewable energy options. This social force influences factors like substitute options in the market. The growth of battery solutions for retail customers is still in the early stages of its industry life cycle. It is a substitute product to buying from the electricity grid. However, this substitute could easily become a competitor in the next decade. There is an inconsistency in the strategy for suppliers who own gas, coal or renewable energy generation assets, and the strategy of other companies like Tesla who are offering an off-the-grid substitute product solution for retail customers. Origin are investing in renewable energy like retail solar panels that customers can combine with electrical storage solutions. However, this cannibalizes their other energy generation business. To an extent, this is an unavoidable gap. Do you ignore the changing consumer market to protect long-term assets, or move quickly to capture share at the expense of another part of your business? Origin's competitors are both large energy generation companies like AGL, but also small retail energy companies. Retail competitors are essentially call centres who buy wholesale power from companies like Origin and AGL and then compete against Origin's retail business to win new customers. Origin will separate their industry competitor gap analysis to consider how other power generation companies are performing against Origin and also how retail energy companies perform against them. Potential inconsistencies might be found in their mix of power generation assets. Are their competitors moving away from coal and gas faster than Origin and growing their renewables revenue stream? On the retail side, are competitors' customer churn rates lower? Are they acquiring new customers in growth markets at a faster rate than Origin is achieving? To recap, we have used the power generation and retail energy industry to show how an organisation can look for inconsistencies between its strategies and the external environment. We analyse the external environment using our well-known tools like PESTLE, Porter's 5 forces, and competitor analysis. It is clear from our high-level look at Origin that the different factors and impacts from the external environment influence more than one type of gap in our analysis. A social impact of customers wanting renewable energy solutions links to new entrants to market, higher buyer power and substitute products. Government intervention in the Australian energy market creates issues for energy companies with ageing non-renewable energy power stations and therefore stakeholder gaps with groups such as their shareholders who expect a strong return on their equity. A gap analysis must be thought of as having various interrelated factors that probe to find inconsistencies between a company's strategy and its external environment.